Okay, welcome everybody to webinar 4 in our prelim Serbia course. Tonight our topic is grammar, contemporary grammar with Claire. So I'm handing over to Claire now.
Thanks very much, Christina, for the housekeeping, and very nice to see everybody, or at least hear Yusuf. Thanks for giving up your evening. I'm sure you've had a busy day, but it's lovely that you've made time to come and watch and be with us this evening to find out about one of my passions in life, and that is grammar. I love grammar. I have the nickname in the Bell School staff room of the Grammar Queen. And if anyone ever has a difficult grammar question, they say, oh, let's ask Claire. So it's quite flattering, I suppose. But I'm very interested in language anyway, as you know. And I do enjoy teaching grammar and looking at how it has been changing. Okay, so in the workshop, let's just have a look at the aims for this evening, what we're going to do. We want to consider how quickly grammar changes. We want to think about some of the reasons why grammar changes. We are going to be looking at and commenting on some examples of change, some much quoted examples of change, the ones that you were looking at in preparation for this, or that you're going to look at in Breakout. You've got them on a handout, 8 examples. And of course, we need to think about to what extent grammar change affects our learners and our role vis-a-vis grammar change and transmitting this to our students. Okay, next slide, please. We're going to start off with something and just take the temperature. Oh, sorry, you want to start with the breakout rooms first? That's fine.
I can do, yeah. I have a feeling that it would help us to work more efficiently in the breakout rooms if you had a chance just to say hi and get to know each other quickly before we start the real task. Let's try and see if this makes the breakout room activities just that little bit faster and easier for you, okay? So I'm going to put you into a breakout room. There'll be 3 or 4 people in your room. Let's do it like that. And I just want you to go around, have a minute each and say, you know, who you are, you know, who am I, what do I do, and why do I do it? So I'll do it for myself as an example quickly, and maybe Claire can do it as well. Okay, so I'm a teacher and teacher trainer, and I am particularly interested in educational technology, right? So what do? I spend a lot of my time playing around with computers and internet programs, writing online courses, moderating courses, running Zoom webinars for people, stuff like that. And why do I do it? Because I think the internet is just such a fantastic tool. It lets us connect. I mean, look at us tonight, all these people in different places. We can't all be in the same physical room, but we get to communicate and share and chat doing it online. So that's why I do what I do. What about you, Claire? Would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, as you know, I'm Claire. I'm originally from Scotland, and now I live in Cambridge. I am a teacher trainer, an examiner, a materials writer, a presenter. And why do I do it? Because I love the English language and I love meeting people. So, you know, I've been meeting students in the classroom for 34 years now, I think. That's me.
Wonderful. So now I'm going to give you guys a chance to work in a breakout room. I'm just checking my numbers here. It's possible, hold on, I'm moving one person. Okay, I think you'll be mainly in groups of 3. So I'll give you about 4 minutes to go around. And I think it's really important that one person is timing so you don't run out of time. Okay, everybody gets about 1 minute to talk. And if there's time left over, you can ask some questions. I'm going to try, if I can, to keep the same breakout rooms for the next breakout room activity. Any questions or problems? If there are, you put them in the chat. Okay, so you've got about 4 minutes just to do this. You won't see the questions, so just remember what they are, please. So who are you? What do you do? And why do you do what you do? I think that's the interesting question. So have fun, guys.
breakout, Christina's going to pop you back in. You're going to discuss these 6 sentences and say what the difference is between them. And then we'll take some feedback afterwards. Okay, so see you in a little while.
Yes, can I recommend that you take a quick screen share of this, a screenshot of this? That would be helpful, because when you go in the breakout rooms, you don't see the PowerPoint. And I can also try to share an image, but I think it's best if you take your own first.
Maybe just two or 3 minutes would do. Is that all right?
Yeah, I think people need about 3 minutes.
3 minutes, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, what's the difference between these 6?
Are we ready, guys? Yeah, thank you. Okay, here we go. Okay, welcome back, everyone.
Okay. Are we ready? Okay, yeah, right, thanks. Thanks, everybody, if you're back with us, that's great. And you had time to discuss, and I hope this threw up several comments, or caused several comments to be made amongst your breakout group. Well, can we have the next slide, please, Christina? Because you may well have discussed something like this. Maybe sentences 1 and 2, the village does not have a post office, or the village has no post office. You may have identified as, yes, that's careful, but it's rather formal. Okay, it's very accurate. It's very standard, perhaps. You might have said something like that. Now, 3 and 4, that's the village doesn't have a post office, and the village hasn't got a post office. You may have designated these 2 as more everyday, maybe more redolent of spoken language, very natural sounding, doesn't have and hasn't got a, okay. And 5 and 6, the village hasn't got no post office, and the village ain't got no post office. It's maybe you said something about, oh, it's a bit casual. And 5 and 6, yes, I'm sure some people were saying, oh, horrible, you know, rubbish, bad English, wrong, uneducated, awful. And, you know, yes, for us as English teachers, those are very emotional reactions. And yes, in fact, you know, great swathes of the UK population do produce sentences like 5 and 6, hasn't got no post office and ain't got no post office. Okay, let's not pretend sentences like that don't exist in the UK. They do. So 5 and 6 are examples of what David Crystal says are, and encourages us to call, non-standard English. And we've had this term before when we looked at phonology. So David Crystal never labels these as wrong or uneducated or substandard. He says they are non-standard, and he never passes judgment on them. He just tells us that they exist, they are out there as forms of English grammar. And if you remember, as we saw in the welcome webinar, non-standard English can simply refer to regional variation, right? Remember I gave you that example of Scotland. Can I get a Coke? Or language that's used by a particular societal group. So I do think we need to move away from calling sentences like 5 and 6 substandard. That's a very loaded prefix. I think we need to move towards non-standard, and acknowledgement that there are non-standard forms of grammar out there in today's UK. Okay, so let's move on then. All right, now that we've got the idea of David Crystal's kind of classification, you know, formal to informal, written, spoken, standard, non-standard, we're going to apply these ideas to the 7 examples of grammar items that are in a state of flux or a state of change in British English. And you got them as a little bit of a handout, or you're able to access them now to have a look at. And you're simply going to could I get onto the next slide, please? Because I think there's a task. Oh no, well, that's them. Oh, sorry. Go back to the pink one. Yeah, that's right. So it was just giving you the chance to look at those examples. I think there may be 8, I can't remember, and indicate whether you feel they're acceptable or unacceptable grammar, okay or not okay, and whether you would teach any of them perhaps as well would be a next step. Okay. All right.
Yes. So I'll just check, is everybody okay with the handout? If you need the handout again, say so.
Ivan D had his hand out.
Again?
Yeah, I need it again because it disappeared from the chat. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
It's always you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's always me.
Yeah. Always one, right? Don't worry.
It's all right.
Second.
Don't worry.
It'll just take me a moment to pull it up because so many things on this computer. Too many files. One moment. It is coming. Okay. Yep, it's been sent now. Got it?
Okay.
Yeah.
So people know what they're doing in their breakout, right? It's just discussing the examples.
Yes, good. So I'm going to open up the rooms now. How many minutes do we think we need for this? About 4 minutes? 5?
4, I think we'll say 4 or 5.
4 or 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we'll need to do the feedback. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, recording.
Okay. Well, when you were in your breakout rooms, maybe there was some disagreement amongst yourselves, and I'm sure that there were some examples. People are nodding, maybe. I'm sure there were some examples that people hated or found really offensive and unacceptable. Well, you know, it's highly likely that you found you had differing levels of tolerance from your colleagues, your peers, and that doesn't matter. The purpose of this webinar, you know, is not to pass judgment on what you feel is right or wrong about those 8 grammar examples. It's to inform you, you know, that grammar change is going on, and it's to make the point that which forms you teach which forms you teach your students depends on what they are learning English for. You know, we've already mentioned the difference between English as a foreign language, which is what I'm involved in teaching, and English as a lingua franca, which is, you know, where students have entirely differing needs to, for example, taking a Cambridge exam or whatever. So what you teach students in terms of grammar or vocabulary is very much dependent on their need. Okay, where and for what are they going to be using English for one day? All right. Okay, so let's do a little bit of individual feedback on these separate items that we had. Okay, were you loving them or not? Okay, so next, this is the ones that we had up that you were talking about. All right. So let's go on to the first one. Now, this is the if I was. Okay, English file, cutting edge. You know, these are best-selling course books for teaching English as a foreign language in the UK. We use them all the time. Now, they are still promoting to students if I were as a chunk of functional language for advice giving. Okay, now English File Advanced tells students that it's okay to use was after I, he, she, and it in the if clause. So if it was sunny, we could eat outside. If my mum was here, she would tell me what to do, as opposed to, you know, if it were sunny or if my mother were here. Okay, so in other words, getting away from the subjunctive were. This is the true subjunctive in English, you know, which is deemed terribly old-fashioned in English today, especially in spoken discourse. All right, so students are still meeting with if I were you as a chunk to give advice, but they are being kind of persuaded away from using if it were sunny, or if my mother were here, in the if clause, okay, in favor of something that is much more widespread now in spoken English, and that's if it was sunny, or if my mum was here, she would tell you. Okay, all right. So the subjunctive is very much in decline in English today. Okay, it's alive and well in many other languages though, so don't panic. Okay, number 2, let's have a look. Are you loving these? Now, this is an example of a text that was sent from my son. It's texting between me and my son. I'm the one in blue because there's my Scottish vocabulary, a wee tub of ice cream. That means little. And you'll notice that my son is the grey text. Are you wanting? Now notice how he slips effortlessly between the simple and the continuous form of want. Now, one of the processes of grammatical change in the last 50 years, and that's been highlighted by corpus analysis, is the increase of the progressive aspect. Despite the accepted rule that stative verbs do not appear in progressive or ing forms, corpus analysis provides us with a lot of evidence that the onward march of the present continuous or the present progressive is not over. Now, before the 20th century, it was uncommon to find the ing form or the progressive used with verbs expressing a state of mind. However, says David Crystal, it seems likely, he says, that all stative verbs will develop dynamic uses over the next 50 years. All right. Well, the only one that's been almost resistant, or up to now is still resistant to this change, is the verb know. All right, not I'm knowing. Okay, we don't find that at the moment, but we may well do one day. However, things like I'm understanding your point. Yeah, I'm hearing you. I'm understanding maths a lot better. I'm needing a break now. You know, I've been online teaching for months. I'm needing a break. I'm hearing you loud and clear. These examples are plentiful. Are you wanting to come in? Are you wanting ice cream? Okay. These are becoming part of standard British and American English, especially as they are very, very commonplace in one of the fastest growing English-speaking countries in the world, and that is India. And let's not forget that one of the reasons for language change is trade and migration. Okay. All right, now let's go on the next one, which I think is a little extra about this. Again from Headway, published in 2018 in its 5th reincarnation, 5th edition. In the grammar reference section at the back of the book of New Headway Advanced, this is where the students go to access tips and notes on grammar. Here we go. And they point out to students, look, what's the difference between I like and I'm liking? All right, to add a sense of immediacy in a colloquial context. So they point this out to students. Yes, you know, state verbs can be used dynamically, and there is a different nuance of meaning behind them. Okay, of course, we need to make a distinction, as I'm sure you said in the breakout room. We must distinguish between written grammar and spoken grammar. All right. Now, I would tell my students to use state verbs in the simple form, in the simple aspect, in a formal written test of grammar, like the Cambridge exam's use of English sections. Okay. However, if they go into a Cambridge speaking test and they said, you know, I'm really liking Cambridge, or I'm really liking Oxford, or whatever, no problem. Okay, but we do need to distinguish, and I think for our students, point out the fact that yes, there is something called written grammar and there is something called spoken grammar. All right, let's pop to the next slide, please. Thank you. Now, here we go. We've got some examples here, right? we've already identified that one of the big drivers of language change is trade and migration, okay? And here we're going to see an example of another reason for change, and that is socio-cultural change. So if we can have the sentence on, please. I think one of them should fly in. Okay, now, for many years, it was perfectly acceptable to refer back to an indefinite pronoun, such as someone, with a masculine pronoun, he or him, or a possessive determiner like his. You know, like everyone should do his best. That was perfectly commonplace. However, many people are no longer comfortable using a masculine form to refer to people in general. They feel that language should be less male biased. And I think you've got some worksheets on this coming up soon, okay, about gender neutrality in language. This has led to a sharp increase in the use of what we call the generic they or their. So let's see what's happened to this then, right? We have our next one flying in. Okay, so not just the preserve of men being a doctor. So then English moved towards this rather awkward his or her. All right, and English had always got this problem about his or her, his/her. Okay, so nowadays we are, fly in please, number 3, thank you, that's lovely. We've got away from this his/her awkwardness to the generic they, and we've gone for the plural form, doctors, plural, because of course men and women in today's society and for the last few centuries, not always have been, but yeah, we get male doctors and female doctors, of course we do nowadays. So the use of plural pronouns to refer back to a singular subject is not actually new. It represents the revival of a practice that dates back to the 16th century, actually. So it's just come full circle again. It's increasingly common in current English, and it's now very, very widely accepted in speech and writing, the use of their, okay? It's inclusive of all people. It helps writers to avoid making assumptions about gender. So it's a great sort of catch-all pronoun, and it gets us away from that terrible awkwardness that English always used to have. He/she, his or her, okay, all right. So we're moving much more towards gender neutral and inclusive language via the use of the generic pronoun they and their, okay. And you've got a little bit of a lesson on this coming up anyway, as I said, okay. All right, so hopefully you found that one acceptable, and you may even be teaching it to students anyway. Okay, let's have a look at the next thing that we need to take on now, and that is, oh, the get passive. All right, okay. Now, the get passive, when we look at corpus analysis, we are finding that the get passive is taking over from the have passive and the be passive in spoken grammar. And here we've got the causative have, to be technical. This is still taught in course books very widely, as you know, have something done. We're also seeing, though, things like he got fired, right, where we would have had the be passive, right, he got fired. The car is getting fixed, where we would have more in written form, he was fired and the car is being fixed. So be passive. All right, so sentence here, example number 4. This is acceptable as an answer in a Cambridge Use of English paper, where the rule of thumb is, well, if a native speaker would say it, it's correct. And the mark scheme that we all have to adhere to when we're marking, the mark scheme would reflect both structures as a correct answer. So have something done and get something done. Tick, tick, okay? So we've got a movement towards the use of get in a passive construction. much more widely than we used to. All right. So hopefully you didn't find that one too offensive and you are okay with have something done and get something done. Okay. All right. Let's move on then to our next example. All right. So this is going back to can I get? Now, here we go. The decline of some modals. Now, not all modals, but some modals. And I've got some statistics for you coming up later on. Okay. Let's see if you did. What did you talk about in your breakout rooms? Okay, if we had to sort of change these, right? We're looking at shall, we're looking at must, and we're looking at may. Well, I'm sure people talked about these in breakout, and you came out with some other more modern constructions, perhaps to replace these. Okay. We shall see fog. All right. Well, nowadays we are going to go towards something like we will. Okay. I think maybe on the next slide we've actually got some more updated versions of these. Christina, can you just check that we may have something? Well, I said I'd give you some statistics. Over a 30-year period, we've seen the use of must declining by 51, okay, in the sense of obligation. Shall, for a prediction about the future, declining by 45%, and may, in a request, may I have a Coke, declining by about 36%. So those three sentences that you were talking about before on the other slide, can we drop down to see if we've got them on the next one as the feedback? Yeah, so nowadays, okay, instead of we shall see fog, all right, it's much more common now. Yes, we will, that's all right, but much more common is we're going to. And the use of shall now, the role of shall is very much only as an offer. Okay, shall I, shall we? And as a suggestion, okay, shall we do that? We're no longer seeing sentences like Cinderella's fairy godmother saying, you shall go to the ball. Okay, that's very old fashioned, all right? And kids no longer shout, I shan't or shan't. When they're told by their parents to do something, they're much more likely to shout, no, I won't, or no, I'm not gonna. All right, so shall and shan't have got very limited shelf life nowadays. All right, okay, so shall being replaced by going to, and then of course, you know, in colloquial speech, gonna, G-O-N-N-A, of course. All right, okay, now what happened to must you go, which sounds like something from Downton Abbey? Must you go? Like, let's see, let's fly it in and see what's happened to that. Okay, so we've got a semi-modal construction replacing the must, the sense of obligation. Do you have to go? And again, H-A-F-T-A, hafta, you know, in text speak and in very informal writing. Do you have to go? It's not that late. Okay. All right, and then what did we do with our last one, which I think was may I? Well, we said that right at the beginning. May I have is can I? All right, so hopefully when you debated these in the breakout rooms, you came up with something that sounds a lot more modern, let's say, okay? Because we have seen a decline in those particular modal verbs. All right, so let's see what's going on in some course books. Thank you, Christina, for the next one, I think. Yeah, as I pointed out, some course books are really at pains to point out that in modern English, yes, the role of shall is very narrow, only as an offer and a suggestion, okay? And yeah, these are the most common uses of shall in modern English, all right? So I do appreciate the fact that lots of course books do have this grammar section at the back, and they do say to students, look, you can use this, but it's considered old-fashioned, or, you know, this is restricted to written English or something like that. So I think we are seeing aspects of grammar change reflected in some of the more recently published course books, because they have to move with the times. All right, thank you. Let's go on to our next one, please. Okay. Yes, right. A particular bugbear of mine, although I'm fairly tolerant on all the other ones. Okay, now, if I'd have known, I'd have told you. Well, okay. Now, my husband is native speaker, British. He's from the north of England, and I have to say, in all the years I've lived with him, I've never ever heard him use the third conditional correctly. Anyway, okay. Here we've got the destruction of the third conditional and the double contraction. This is called the double contraction. And let's just point out, double contractions look very strange in writing, but they're terribly easy to produce orally. If I'd have known, I'd have told you. There are always lots and lots of posts on grammar forums asking about this one. And I came across some the other day when I was researching stuff for this webinar. Is I'd have an actual word, someone had written? Is it proper English? Do you think it's okay to use if I'd have done? You know, lots of questions about this on grammar forums. Okay, and if you remember the examples of the post office in the village that we had from David Crystal at the beginning, the village hasn't got no post office and it ain't got no post office. All right, now we labeled them non-standard varieties, non-standard forms, and this is another example of a non-standard form of the third conditional. In a nutshell, while I am very aware that this is widespread in spoken English today, I live with someone who speaks like this. I'd never ever overtly teach this to my students in a grammar lesson, because they need the third conditional. They need the standard third conditional to use in a formal written personal statement for university application, for example, or because they will be expected to know how to manipulate the form in a Cambridge exam transformation sentence. So the type of students that Liz and I teach at Bell School need to know what the standard third conditional form is. However, remember, David Crystal says a new usage arrives when most people in a society decide to use it. So following David Crystal's way of thinking, this may well one day become the third conditional of the future. But there's the double contraction. If I'd have, I'd have. Okay. All right. So maybe this was the one that caused the most argument or debate. I'm not sure. All right. Let's pop on to the next thing then. All right. Okay. So I think this repeats what we said and what we mentioned when we talked about phonology and pronunciation change. Non-standard grammar. Okay. And we mustn't call it substandard, although that's very you know, it's very tempting as language teachers or grammar fans. Okay, non-standard may be geographically based, it may be regional. So I use different types of grammar because I'm from Scotland to my English colleagues, for example. It may be a particular form that is used by young people, the young, youth language, or it may be people of certain ethnic backgrounds that use a particular grammatical form. And who's to say that these won't one day become mainstream and standard British English? All right, so I think if we're going to summarize then what we've said here, and then we might have some time for some chat and discussion. Let's go on to our last bit maybe. I think we've been looking at the fact that, you know, we do need to make a distinction between spoken grammar and written grammar. The idea of formality and register, of course. Grammar change has not really impacted on standard written English, but as far as speech is concerned, informal speech in particular, the future is one of variety and thus change. You know, and with all this variation going on in the real world, what about the classrooms? You know, should we be teaching any of this stuff? Many of the references that we had from the course books there, the references in the course books to these points of grammar, they did come from intermediate and above, okay? So I think that's significant in itself. Learners today are going to encounter grammatical forms such as those 7 that we looked at on the internet, on social media, via gaming, via YouTube. So teachers always ask me, is it important that this type of non-standard grammar gets integrated into lessons? And I always say it depends on what type of English your students need or will need. Are you teaching the grammar that will help students pass exams or write a great job application? Or are you teaching people that will need to fit into British society as taxi drivers, waiters, bin men, or cleaners? Which grammar you teach depends on whether your learners need academic English or survival English. So there are some questions here for you to think about on the final slide. You know, English is not invulnerable to other influences, but the consensus is that it will continue to be a dominant tongue for many years to come. But we perhaps should remember the English of the future will not be the English we're currently familiar with. And we know from what we said before about the number of non-native to native speakers, we are in the hands of non-native speakers, and change, grammatical, lexical, phonological, is inevitable. Okay, so I hope this will generate a little bit more discussion, because it's a very interesting area, I think, to see what's going on and whether we tolerate it, whether we would teach it, whether we would point it out to students, whether students point it out to us. Not long ago, I did a whole lesson, and it was a fantastic lesson, though I say so myself. It was a fantastic lesson on reported speech. And then at the end of the hour and a half, little guy put his hand up and said, do people really use reported speech now? Don't they just say, I was like, and he was like, and we were like? And I went, yes, they do. But you can't use that in a written Cambridge exam. Okay, so thanks everybody. And maybe we can open up to any questions or queries.
Yes, can I just say, I mean, we had thought that we could have another breakout room session, but it kind of depends on you, I suppose. And your time, because it is now 7 minutes past.
If people have got time, they might want to break out a bit more. But
I can recreate the breakout rooms with different people, putting maybe 4 people in a breakout room, or we can stay in gallery mode. I can open up the gallery mode and we can discuss all together. What would you guys like to do? You can turn off your microphone and just speak if you want. Yes, go ahead. What do you prefer? Opening up to gallery mode and we all talk together, or do you want 6 or 7 minutes in a breakout room to discuss it? It's not a problem for me. I have time.
Gallery, somebody's put gallery, so
gallery.
That's all right, yeah. And then we
can... okay, so in that case, I'm going to stop the share here and we'll go back to gallery. So if you can put off, sorry, if you can turn your cameras on, it might be nice so we can see who wants to speak. And I will...
something on chat here. Hang on, let's put that on the side.
Oh, I sent it
oh, yeah.
In chat. Okay. I'm a bit confused with this.
You look as if you've seen a ghost.
Yeah.
You look as if you saw a ghost.
What is hypothetical? Does it depend on whether you assume a ghost as something that does not exist, or what?
You look as if you have seen a ghost. Okay, so that's present perfect, and the result is visible now. Is that what you mean? Or do you? Yeah. What's your query?
In one of the textbooks, I found that all 3 are possible. So I'm a bit confused with that. With the explanation, there was no explanation.
Well, for me, it's a question of tense, I suppose. I think if someone walks into a room and they're like really white, you would go for the first one. You know, that's present perfect for a recent occurrence and visible in the present.
Yeah,
You're
but
really,
then
you're really pale. You look as if you have seen a ghost. All right, recent result. Yeah.
I, as a speaker, would assume that there is a ghost.
Really? No, I think
Well,
it's kind of,
I wonder.
you look as if
Would I?
You look as
More
if
of an
you've seen a
idiomatic
ghost.
thing, isn't it? When someone is completely white and shocked looking, then we say,
Yeah, I
"Oh, you look
understand
like
that.
you
Yeah.
saw a ghost."
I think the second one is very unnatural, no?
Yeah, yeah, for me too.
You look
I
as if
say
you
it could
saw
be
a
an
ghost.
attempted American English because we don't use the present perfect.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm thinking that somebody, I don't think it's a particularly great example because I think an American might say, "You look like you saw a ghost."
Yeah.
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 That's much
So-
more natural.
So
I
can
think,
you
yes,
compare
I
the
think
first and the last
possibly-
one.
I think possibly you look like has now in more contemporary English replaced look as if, right?
Yeah.
You look like you've seen a ghost.
Mm.
And I think maybe that is what they are trying to highlight here. I think that has replaced the look as if. I think look like is replacing you look as if. Plus
Yeah,
present
but it's
perfect.
the point of the usage of the tenses. Look at the first and the third.
Yeah. Can I ask you which course book you saw this in?
I think it's expert. Expert. I'm not sure whether for expert first or expert advanced.
Strange.
Well, it's very.
I'll check and send it to you by
I think
on the
having,
Facebook. Yeah.
I think having past perfect here, I anchors it in the past, but I don't.
Or maybe
like
maybe they gave another example and I
don't
searched
like the
on the
present-
web,
the
so I
present
got
simple
this
at the
on the
front.
web.
I would
I'm
put
not
them
quite
both
sure.
into the past.
I will check.
You looked as if you
as
had
if there
seen.
is.
I would put past simple with looked, and
Yeah.
past perfect the other half.
Mm.
Yeah.
Odd.
So when would you use the first and when would you use the third?
Well, the third one's weird because it should be you looked as if you had seen a ghost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I saw you last week, you looked as if you had seen a ghost. So I think it's fairly strange to have present simple in one half and past perfect in the other half. I would, because they're narrative tenses, I would put you looked.
Yeah.
You looked as if you had seen a ghost the last time I saw you. Yeah. So, okay. But yeah, I don't know if they're looking at the use of look or if they're looking at narrative tenses. It's not clear to me what the point is of these three.
It would be nice if you could take a photo later of the course book. And
Okay. I'm not sure whether this is the example or maybe they use something else.
Okay.
But I'll send it to you.
What grammar are they focusing on, for example? Yes.
They were focusing on hypothetical use of language.
All right. Look as if. All right. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Any other examples of grammar change that you've noticed? I mean, one that I left off, which I didn't put on, but we could have done. It's a whole other topic if you want, but less versus fewer. All right. You have less. This happened to me actually in the staff room not long ago. I looked at the list of students on the board and I said to someone standing next to me, oh no, he said to me, oh, Claire, lucky, you have less students than me. And I said, John, it's not less students, it's fewer students. And he said something very rude and called me a pedant. So now I've got fairly high tolerance of those grammar examples that I gave you to discuss, but I don't like the third conditional. I don't like the double contractions in the third conditional. I still find that it sits really awkwardly with me. And I don't like less versus fewer when people use them willy-nilly or interchangeable. I don't like that.
I'm guilty of that.
Oh, sorry. Okay. But
Okay.
that's just it.
I
It
hear
becomes
myself
quite,
saying it, and then I
yes.
think, oh, I really should switch that to fewer because I'm speaking.
yeah,
to
it
students.
becomes quite personal, I think. You know, some of them I have very high tolerance of because I've heard them so much,
Yeah.
you know, and my son uses them, I guess, you
Mhm.
know, as a young person.
Mhm.
But I'm quite a stickler for countable, uncountable, and the related language that goes with that. And third conditional, I always teach my students the standard third conditional.
Mhm.
But, you know, I'm happy to say if I was you rather than if I were you, you know, so that's become part of my own language use now. And I'm not, but I'm resistant to certain other things, you know. Yeah.
Okay, I think
Anybody
some
else?
people are needing to head off now. I can see
Yeah,
that.
that's
I
fine.
totally
Yeah.
understand that. We're just sitting and chatting at this point, guys.
Yes, we are. That's
So
right.
it's
Yeah,
perfectly okay. Thank you very much, Claire, for
that's fine. Welcome, everybody.
the presentation tonight. And I'll be here for another couple of minutes if anybody wants to ask any questions or say anything. You're very welcome to stay or to go. Okay?
Yeah, certainly.
Entirely up to you. I'll close the meeting down in 2 or 3
Absolutely,
minutes. I need to go and do something else as well.
Yeah.
I've got another meeting.
Of course, yeah. If you have to get something done, that's fine. Yeah. All right.
Got a second meeting coming up. Yes, please.
Yes.
Yes, Giovanna.
Christina, I've sent you some of my student materials, like the unboxing video script that we've done a few days ago. I'm sorry for being this late, but I've managed to deal with everything.
That's okay. Thank you. I
Yes.
saw it in the email. I'm going to read it
Yes.
properly
Yeah.
a bit later. I've got something starting tomorrow, a class starting tomorrow, and I'm
Yeah.
just trying to get completely
Yeah.
organized for that. And then
So
as
I've sent two with two different groups of students.
then you've done double. It's fantastic.
Well, I've done three actually, but the third one needs some editing.
Oh, okay. If with your permission, I'll put them on the website.
Of course, yes.
It's
no
very
problem.
nice. People are watching it. People are coming and having a look.
So
And
it's
they-
not the video, it's the photos with the script. Yes.
Fabulous.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how you do it. It's just, it depends on the class, you know, and you can do it in different ways with students. So I think
Yeah.
it's good to have variety. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be a video.
Sounds great.
Students don't enjoy
Yes.
being on a video. So, you know,
Yeah, most of them were quite shy. At first they said, okay, maybe you could put up the photos and the script, the lines and our voices saying that, but then they said, no, we don't want that either.
oh,
Fine.
okay. That's fine.
Thank you for all that
Perfectly
you've done for me. Yes.
That's fine. It's going to have privacy issues as well. I mean, that's
Yes,
perfectly
of
normal.
course.
I don't mind
Yes.
at all.
Yeah.
It's
But they let
wonderful.
me put up their names without the last names, so yeah.
That's nice. Yeah,
But
that's
you could use
perfect.
that.
Yeah,
Use
that's
that.
great.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. I don't need their last names, and we don't really want to
Yeah.
identify anybody, you know, on the internet. So that's great. It's not a completely private site in the sense that there's no password, but at the same time, it's not searchable. If you search on Google, you will not find it.
Okay.
So it is kind of semi-private, I can say.
Right.
A website. You're unlikely. People are unlikely to find any of that content. Yes. Okay.
Right.
Yes. Thank you very much, Joanna.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes, Mariana. You're going now? Okay. Take good care. Yes, I can see you in the chat. See you soon. Okay.
Bye-bye. Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Thanks for the
Yeah.
question. Yeah. Any other questions or comments from anyone?
You don't got none? Okay.
Yeah, we don't got no questions.
All right. Fine. Okay. Thanks,
Okay.
everyone. See you
Yes, thank you
soon.
very much. I'm going to close the
Bye.
meeting down if that's okay then.
All right. Bye.
See you all on Facebook or soon. Take good care, everyone. All right. Bye.